All right, welcome. I think we're live. I hope we're live. Let's check in with our friends here helping us out today. So welcome. This is our live stream where we're going to be presenting a workshop on our game animation program that we offer at AnimSchool. And also we have with us Evan Mead, an animator, that is going to be talking about some of the common pitfalls that animators make in the industry. So let me introduce to you our guest speaker today. So today we have with us Evan Mead, lead animator at Superseed here. Or not Superseed, sorry, Mountaintop. Thank you. Yeah, we were just talking with Matt. So anyways, welcome. Thank you for being here today, for bringing your knowledge and giving us all a workshop. I'm really excited to get started. We also have with us, helping us out today, we have Matt Hansen, one of our AnimSchool game animation graduates also, and he's worked at Superseed. He's worked at Microsoft now on Call of Duty, and of course, it's always great to have Matt helping us out. And if you were here last time, we talked about some animation blueprints in Unreal, and I just love that we get to get together again and just share our knowledge. My name is Jared Showers. I'm the lead animator at Night Street Games, and I've been an animator in the industry for over 25 years, starting off with games like Soldier of Fortune and Heretic 2 way back in the day, and I got to work on Call of Duty as well. That's what I tell all my family and friends that don't know about games. I've also worked in the VR world at Polyarc and id Software and Carbine Studios. Well, I want to just open it up here. So games in general, very exciting to talk about. Last night we had the Summer Games Fest. It's one of the season's largest gaming presentations, where instead of having shows like E3, we have an all online edition where we get to get a sneak preview at all the games coming out soon. If any of you saw that, I'd love to have you post in the chat just what caught your eye. What were your favorite games out there? Evan, Matt, what were some of your favorite games that caught your eye?
For me, it was Diva, the from the developers of Gris, and that game just looks so good.
Yeah,
the art style looks fantastic, and I don't know, it just looks so magical. I'm excited for that to come out later this year.
Yeah, I'm excited for M. Bison coming to Street Fighter. Although I may watch that again because I was like, I know that's M. Bison, but it doesn't look like M. Bison. And then that Hyper Light Breaker looks really neat too. I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah, this is just my perception, but it didn't seem like there were a lot of those like AAA heavy hitters being announced. Just a lot of like indie studios. They really catch my eye a lot, mainly because I work in an indie studio. But yeah, I think that throughout the course of the coming weeks, I think some of the bigger publishers and developers are going to be having their own announcement as well. So, I think Microsoft has theirs on Sunday, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, these are the things that get us excited. We get inspired by seeing other people's work here, and it's always great. We have this great animation community, game animators. We love sharing our knowledge and stories, weathering through some of the hardships that we've had to do, this past year, especially with all the layoffs and, just kind of, hanging tight. We're trying to figure out when are things going to start to stabilize a little bit, you know. And I think seeing some of the games coming out, that gets us excited again. That, you know, games are still being made, jobs are still out there, and yeah, we're here to help everybody keep learning. You know, I think that's a great attitude to have, is that no matter what stage of life you're in, what season, that it's always great to just learn the newest technology, keep up on those trends, and join a community like this one. This is awesome. So I'd like to start off just by giving a quick presentation just to show off what we do here at AnimSchool. So I'm the head of the games department here, and about 10 or so years ago, I started developing a curriculum of 3 classes, if you will, that kind of round out the end of the AnimSchool journey. So all students, they got to start somewhere. So we have a program at AnimSchool that starts off even as early as learning about Maya. Where are the buttons? And you get all the way through body mechanics, and, you know, your bouncing ball exercises and your walks, and, you know, all the things that kind of help you get acclimated to doing video reference and the workflows that come with animating. And then at some point you need to make a decision if you're going to kind of specialize more in character performance, or if you want to get into video games. This is where we've developed our curriculum. And over the years, you know, we've had such great instructors come in, and they've helped refine it and bring their own expertise. And Evan here, he's one of our instructors for the intro to game animation class. So this is sort of the gateway into the program. And one of the things that we like to pride ourselves with is that we try to teach students a little bit of everything, and you don't need to come in with any prior knowledge of what is a game engine like Unreal or Unity. We help you get your feet wet. We teach you the basics, the things that you need to get your animations into the game and to test it out, just like it were a real game animation job. So what I'd like to show you right now is a presentation from one of our game animation showcases here. Here's some fine work, some extraordinary work from Matt Hansen, who's joining us today. Yeah, really excited for all the work that our students put together. I realize my audio does not carry over when I hide myself. So I'm going to just kind of share with you this is just some examples of what students have done in our intro to video game animation class. So we focus on player animation and gameplay, creating that game feel, kind of meeting, you know, what does it mean to meet the expectations of the player, how to add character and personality to our characters when you have just a small range of animations. So you got your idle, you've got your walk or run or both, you've got a jump, you've got an attack, and then we even let our students create an enemy attack so that you can create a full game loop. And it's really important for our students to bring their animations into the game engine. So we have our very own game that we've written, and we make it as easy as we can for students to just come in and replace their animations with what's already in the game. But we don't want to just stop there. We want our program to be scalable to meet the skill level of our students. So if you want to get more deep into Unreal, we show you how to add effects to your work, how to create different blends and blend spaces, and we can get as technical as you have time for. This is our game engine reference right here. This is just a video recording of what our game looks like. So Epic, they provide a few free levels. All of this is free to download from the Epic Marketplace. You can get all these levels. So what we've done is we've set up our game with our specific characters from AnimSchool to start placing their characters in the engine and testing it out and learning that process of iterating. And yeah, we are very fast, a very fast and full. We do about an assignment a week. And then the idea then, if we treat this a lot like a game animation job, is we come back at the end of the term for the last couple of weeks and we spend time polishing. This is to sort of simulate what it's like when you have an audio designer or an engineer asking you for some assets and you just need to sell the idea. So the idea is that you create something fast, you sell that idea, you get in the game, iterate on it, and then afterwards, then you go back and you polish up your work. So this is just some, this is all student work, by the way, just a compilation of all of that. Then we go into our next, I'm going to share my screen here. We go into our next class, which is our creature and motion capture class. Let's see if I can share my entire screen here. All right, so what I have here is the syllabus. Let me see if I can open that up. There we go. I hope you guys can see that okay. So these are 11-week classes. We spend the first 4 or 5 weeks doing creature, idles, and moves and jumps, attacks. This is our intro to game animation class or syllabus, and then this is the next class. This is our quadrupeds, creatures, and motion capture. We get a lot of interest in learning about both, and so we kind of emulate the same class that we do in the intro class with our creatures and AI. When we talk about quadrupeds, and we get them to do idles and moves and attacks, and we have a flight animation assignment. And then we move into motion capture, where we focus on stitching and heightening and cycles. All good skills to have in this industry, as motion capture is a great tool for creating a lot of animations and very realistic looking animations. So if you're working on a game like Call of Duty, this is an excellent skill to learn. And then we round out the course with our cinematics class. And this is a 2 assignment course where we spend the first few weeks doing a character interaction, really selling weight and that distribution between force going between 2 actors. And then we finish off with a little bit of a performance, like something you would see in an Uncharted game, where you've got a cinematic that might lead from gameplay into a cinematic and then back into gameplay, or maybe it's a boss intro or a level ending. All right, these are some of the rigs that we offer at AnimSchool, and we do allow outside game rigs to come in. We just talk about what makes a legal game ready rig. We talk about the hierarchy and the different controls that we would like to see so that they can translate into our game, things like weapon controls and things like that. But we really love all the personalities and characters that our students bring into the class. One of the things that we sort of spend time talking about is how do we make a character like, for example, Riker here? How do we make him look and feel different from other students? You know, it could be a prop, it could be a different weapon. And we spent some time talking about, well, who is this character? What do they do when they're not fighting bad guys? We spent some time developing that personality. All right. The other, other things that kind of set us apart here in this program are the soft skills that we teach. By the way, I'm trying to find where I'm at again. Where's Stream Yard? There we are. You guys still with me? All right. We spent some time talking about soft skills, things like we have a mock interview, for example. We've got, that's a skill that we want our students to come out of these classes having some good experience getting into the industry. We talk about our communication skills, especially this day and age with post-COVID, where most studios allow some kind of a work from home option. I think once COVID hit and everybody was working remotely, it opened up the doors for everyone from around the world to be able to work at different studios, which I thought was a great thing. It's not for everybody. I think I certainly miss going into the office at times, but I think that more than ever, it's proven that good communication skills are important. And so we have our own Discord server, and we talk about our game assignments and really build up those communication skills there. Matt, any questions come up in that time at all?
Not a lot. Mainly ones I couldn't just answer in chat already. The big one that I kind of actually want both of your opinions on is, what is too old to get into animation? My answer is you're never too old to start animation.
Yeah, I love that answer. And, coming from somebody that has been in the industry as long as I have, I love it. I love that, as long as I'm inspired, as long as I'm, my mind is active, I'm ready to learn new things. I think that's really the main prerequisite to getting into an industry, for being an animator. I'm a big kid at heart. You can see all the toys I have on my shelf behind me. I think, with this industry, it is changing a lot. I think even with like the introduction of control rig inside of Unreal, this is a brand new thing that is going to be changing our industry. Maybe we won't be modeling or animating outside of the game engine as much. I'm very interested and excited to get into animating inside of Unreal. Mm-hmm. Evan, what would you say?
Yeah, definitely would echo what you said, and I would also say, maybe kind of dip your toes in to see, like, if this is something you're interested. Does the idea of game animation match like the career? Because especially game animation too, it's not just animating. It's you're a game developer, you're working in the engine, you're working with designers and different things like that. Yeah, so I guess I would say you're definitely never too old, but it's a very specific niche thing. So it's not like, if you have a passion for it, then I would say go for it. But if you're like, oh, it's kind of interesting, then maybe make sure this is something that you're really dedicated and passionate to get into.
Yeah, that's great, and I love I love that you said kind of dip your toes in it. And the best part about that is that you can do it for free. Like you don't have to really invest a lot financially. And I think if you have a few hours a night, an hour a night even, just downloading Blender, for example, and Unreal, these are a great place to just start. I see questions of is animation a hard career? I think hard, there are different levels of hard for everybody. I think for sure there's a lot of folks wanting to get into the industry, especially with the hardships that we've kind of faced, with larger AAA studios having bigger layoffs. We've got thousands of folks in the work pool now trying to get back in. And I think if you know how to inspire yourself and keep learning and to keep at it, keep going, figure out what adds to your energy level there. You can weather anything, but thankfully you don't have to do any heavy lifting unless it's a computer from one office to another. But as long as your mind is active, I think that's the most important part.
I do have one question of the result of the games courses. What do we get out of it? Do we make our own game, or what's something that students can expect?
Yeah, Evan, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So it's not, you won't be making a game from scratch necessarily. There's kind of a preset template, like it's going to be a third-person action game. So there's kind of, like a base of something for you to build upon. So, at the end, though, you'll have like a playable character that can run around, jump, and be fully interactive. So that'll be like all of your animation that you've created. And then, of course, you can always, build upon this project in the future, after class is over, if you want to continue adding to it. It's set up in a way that you can keep creating more and adding more detail. But yeah, it's basically, kind of like using a template and then creating like your own gameplay animation.
Yeah, that is good to know. And it's not that you wouldn't own it, because I always tell my students when they take the classes, we provide for you that template, make it your own. There's no reason why somebody couldn't add their own level to it. In fact, we have had students that have grabbed levels that they've purchased and they found, we have this epic Unreal marketplace at our disposal. Every month there's something new. Actually, I haven't checked this month yet to see what the new free things are. Everybody go check. But yeah, it's great. Epic gives away free assets every month, and you're lots of deals happening. And make it your own. Like I said, we try to make our assignments scalable. We want to start with the core essential animations, but if you have the time, if you have the energy and inspiration, and if you want to carry it on even past the class, that's what it's intended for. I love it when students will see what we have created for a template and they're like, well, I see this, can we take it to the next level? Can we try something new? And it always excites me, because I'm like, okay, now you're getting motivated, you're getting passionate about something, and that's how you're going to learn even more. You're just going to really skyrocket. I love that.
Yeah, I had a student set up like a first-person shooter using like the project, so that was really neat to see it from like that different perspective.
That's awesome. Well, I want the questions to keep coming in, Matt, if you don't mind, just kind of keeping track of that, and we'll come back again at the end here. I don't want to delay any longer. We've been waiting for Evan to come and impart his knowledge on us. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. And Evan, I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about 5 common pitfalls in animation physicality. So to start, I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of a little presentation I've prepared, and then we're going to look at some examples in game. All right, so starting, so gameplay animators are tasked with conveying physical movements in a believable way. Frequently, these movements tend to be exaggerated or beyond what is physically possible. Nevertheless, we still need to depict these actions convincingly to avoid breaking the sense of immersion for the player. So in this presentation, I will go over 5 common physicality mistakes and strategies to identify them. Avoiding these pitfalls will result in more accurate and believable physical movements, as well as help train your eye to detect these oversights. So these pitfalls may seem obvious, but 3D animation is complex and it can be easy to overlook some of these issues. Gameplay animators are often tasked with animating actions far beyond what a real person is capable of, such as jumping across large gaps or running at superhuman speed. So animators require a strong understanding of human motion in order to make these actions look believable. So we're all experts in human motion. Even non-animators who might not be able to pinpoint the exact issue can tell when something looks off, since we constantly observe human motion every day. These oversights can occur for various reasons, such as not viewing your animation from multiple angles. For example, maybe you're only looking at it from the side, not thinking in full body poses or focusing on one body parts at a time. And then one of the easiest traps to fall into is relying on what you think is correct rather than using reference or acting out emotion. So over time, you can refine your eye to look for these pitfalls. But for now, let's identify 5 common oversights that we should strive to avoid, and then we'll go through these topics one by one. All right, so 5 are lack of clavicle influence, large bends on the upper area of the spine, moving single body parts in isolation, poses lacking proper weights, distribution, and balance, improper leg and foot movements. Okay, so starting with lack of clavicle influence. So, for example, raising or swinging your arms with little to no influence from the clavicle. Depending on your rig and how it's set up, you may have the option to rotate the clavicles, while some setups may give you translation or even the option to utilize both. Also note that some game engines might only allow rotation on certain bones to save memory. But with that said, you should use whatever you have at your disposal to achieve the desired pose. So first I'm going to talk about some exercises you can do at home to kind of make yourself aware of these physical motions. I'm not going to get up and do them just because I'm not set up for this, but here's some instructions, okay? So act these out in your leisure. All right, so for our first example, you're going to face forward. You're going to put one hand on the top of your shoulder, and then, I lied, I'll do this one. And then you're going to raise your arm up as high as possible. Now feel how much movement takes place on the clavicle, especially the higher you raise your arm. And so another exercise would be to do the same thing, face forward, put one hand on the front of your shoulder and swing your arms back and forth, and feel how much the clavicle takes, feel how much motion the clavicle has. Jared, can you play that video again? I'm sorry. All right, so with this first character, you see him raising his arm with no clavicle influence. So these are just isolated examples right here. Now, the second character, you see what a difference raising the clavicle makes here, right? Now, this character is swinging its arms forward, but there's no clavicle influence. Where once we see the second pose, you can see the clavicle rotating forward as the arm swings forward. And then here are kind of the same poses, but more full body poses to kind of see it in context more. So you see like what a difference that makes there with the left clavicle, and here swinging forward again. You know, it might be one of those things you don't really think about until you kind of look at the difference between clavicle motion and missing clavicle motion. Right. Okay, next, let's talk about large bends on the upper area of the spine. So another issue I tend to see in student work is rotating the upper spine while the lower spine and hips are static. For humans, most of the bending takes place on the lower back, the lumbar spine. Also, large rotations on the mid to the top of the spine can make the rib cage feel like it's not solid or that it's collapsing on itself. One way to think here is to start at the bottom of the spine and make your way up, rotating each control less so that the largest rotations are happening on the lower back. And Jared, whenever you're ready, let's take a look at the next set of examples. All right, so we see this first character is rotating from its upper spine only. And now the second one, you're seeing more influence from the lower spine. And here it's tilting to the side, but only using the upper spine, where here you're getting that influence of the lower back. And then again, we have some more in context. Here's the character just bending forward, using the upper spine, as the other character is going to be using, the lower back to drive most of the bend here. Then we got some leaning, right? If you look at the lower torso and the pelvis, you see there's no rotation here. It's kind of static. Where in the next animation, it should have more of a proper influence. All right. Okay, so the next topic, moving single body parts in isolation. So another common pitfall is moving single body parts in isolation rather than thinking in full body poses or considering that the influence moving this part has on the body. Think back earlier to our example of swinging your arms back and forth, right? Not only is there clavicle influence, but you can feel your spine twist as well. And the more forceful you swing your arms, the more that influence spreads as you will feel your hips rotate and your body react to that motion. And one example I kind of see commonly in student work is possibly like when you're building a fidget on top of an idle animation. So you want to give your character some added life. You want them doing something interesting on occasion instead of kind of just doing the same looping idle over and over. Well, even when you do things like rotating the yaw of your head, you can feel the weight shifting in your torso and your spine kind of pulled in the direction that you're looking. Jared, whenever you're ready, can we fire up the video for 3? Yeah. All right, so here's our first character just looking to the left with no influence. And now our second character, you can see that the spine is rotating with the head. And this character is looking up with no influence, where this one is shifting its weight to kind of balance and bending its spine backwards as it looks up. And here's kind of the same examples, but in more of a full body pose to see this in action. Yeah, here's our character looking up, and then our full body example next to him, compensating, to balance as he's looking up. All right. So next up, poses lacking proper weight distribution and balance. So one of the definitely the most common issue I see are poses that lack proper weight distribution or poses that are off balance. Remember that as you move, your center of gravity is shifting and your body must either balance or counterbalance. So here's some more exercises for you to try at home to kind of get your mind thinking about this physicality. So we're going to face forward, stand as straight as possible. All right, we got Jared doing this. All right. Now, in this position, try balancing on one leg while supporting the other. I can't even, oh yeah, there he goes. So feel how much your hips move and your weight shifts over the supporting leg. All right, Jared, you're not done. Okay, now try raising one leg without shifting your weight or counterbalancing. Yeah, so you won't get very far without feeling like you're falling over. Don't hurt yourself. All right, so another exercise we can do. We're going to face forward, stand as straight as possible with your weights evenly distributed to both legs. Put your hands on the side of your hip and bend your knees and lower your body. So you notice how much your rear goes back and your spine rotates to maintain balance. So if you were to try to keep your hips above your feet and your back as straight as possible, you'll start to feel yourself falling backwards. And then we have one more exercise here, because this one is such a common, these are all very common ones. So once again, we're going to face forward. We're going to stand straight with your weight distributed evenly. And you're going to keep your legs straight and start to bend forward. So notice how it doesn't take much rotation to get to the point where you begin to lose balance and fall forward. So Jared, if you try to rotate from your spine, keep your hips straight, it really doesn't take much before you're falling over, right? You're basically just falling. So that's something we need to think about when we're posing, that if you're bending, you need to be able to compensate and balance your motion there. So Jared, whenever you're ready, we'll go do the video for example 4. Yeah, so here it is isolated, and we've got the leg lifting up, and now we've got this character who's shifting its weights to balance so they can actually lift their leg up. And here's one falling, bending over, right? This character would be falling on their face. Now we have the next one who's compensating by moving their hips back to balance with their center of gravity. And now we have, the same poses, but more like a full body example. We see how much this character has to shift over the weight over this leg to stay balanced. And then again, this character would be falling on its face if we try to do this in real life. So we have our second character here compensating as they bend forward. Thank you. All right, so the final topic we're going to talk about this morning is improper leg and foot movement. So what does that entail? So that here I'm talking about the foot planted on the ground while the knee is bent at an extreme angle, rotating from an incorrect pivot depending on weight distribution, knee position making the ankle look broken. So another, a very common issue with student physical animations is seeing the foot planted while the knees are bending at an extreme angle. So in these poses, the ankle looks unnatural, broken, and not balanced. So we got one more motion exercise here for you to do at home to kind of nail this home. All right, Jared's he's all in for this. Okay, so we're gonna again face forward, and you're gonna take one small step forward with your one leg, and keep your other foot planted flat. Now start to lower your body. Now you see how his foot is rotating at the ball after a certain point, right? If you were to try to keep that foot flat, that back foot flat, you would really be stretching, and at some point it's going to be really painful and unnatural. Yes. Thank you, Jared. Perfect. Another example would be putting your weight on your foot, because in having it pivot from the heel instead of the ball area. So if your weight bearing foot is pivoting, it should be from the ball or toe. In some instances, it does make sense to pivot your foot from the heel. But for example, standing idle, when you're shifting your weight from one leg to another, like Jared, if you can shift your weight, does it feel, now with your other leg, are you able to rotate from the heel as you shift your weight? Now, when you put weight on that foot, you're going to be unbalanced if you try to rotate from your heel. It's going to make, it's very uncomfortable. It's hard to do. You can't do it. We get our balance from shifting, pivoting from the ball and the toe of the foot there, the weight-bearing foot. And here's another one that, Jared, don't act this one out. I don't want you to break your ankle. So this issue is with the foot being flat on the ground, but the knee at a severe angle, which causes the ankle to look broken. So sometimes, animators, we want the foot to be perfectly on the ground, but we might not be thinking about, the knee and the physicality of the motion. And some rigs might have like a useful attribute like ankle lean or a control to help with this, but there's still a limit where going beyond that can make the ankle look broken. So at some point, you need your ankle to be tilting if your knee is at an extreme angle. So Jared, whenever you're ready, can we take a look at example 5? All right, so we see our first character. Look at that back right foot. Ouch, right? But this is a common thing I see a lot. It's like if your knee is bent that much, you need to be rotating your foot from the ball. And here we see a more natural bend on that foot, right? He's able to stay balanced, and the ankle looks physically correct here, that back right ankle. And here we see this character is pivoting from the heel, which feels off balance and wrong, right? And this, as I say, he's getting ready to turn or change direction. Using the heel feels wrong. Where on the next example, we see the character pivoting from the ball or the toe, which feels like physically correct. Now, if you look at that back right ankle, you look at that angle that it's hitting there, like it's flat on the ground while the leg is really rotated at an extreme angle. So that's, reads as broken. So you want to adjust your rotation on your foot in these instances to avoid that kind of extreme angle on the foot and leg. So here are the examples again, but with more of a full body pose, showing these differences. So we have the ankle bending again, the toe bending at the ball of the foot. Here, instead of rotating from the heel, as we're have the weight bearing foot, we're rotating from the ball of the foot. And then we've got this extreme angle on the ankle here, this flat foot. We need that to be more natural. So we're going to rotate that foot so it feels physically correct. All right. Yeah, so that's the 5 examples I have for today. But I thought we could do a little quiz here and look at some poses, and maybe we can get some people to answer what they see is incorrect in these videos. And then you'll get bonus points.
All right. Ready for the let me pause it or
yeah, pause for just 1 second here. So here we have, like, let's say this is our reference pose. Like this is our so correct pose, right? So first we're going to look at this pose, and then we're going to look at another pose, and let's try to see what issue this pose has. Can anyone, if anyone wants to chime in the chat, or Matt or Jared, if you guys want to answer, what do you see the issue on this character, the second character pose on the right here? And it also I'm looking at it from different angles if you want to play it more, because some of these things are difficult to see until you start rotating your camera around.
Whoa! I see it.
Jared sees it. But it was hard at first, right? Because it's not as apparent from that angle. You had to,
if I had my camera set.
Yeah.
If I never rotated around, I might not see that this guy looks a little off balance to me. Yeah,
this person is not standing up, right? This person's falling down. Even in like a fast action, and you're in between your poses, your blends, they need to all be balanced, or it's going to feel like it's fallen over. Yes, Eric, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Eric and Jared, bonus points.
If I may, Someone asked about what is like the difference between cinematic animation and game animation, and this is a big one where you have to look at all angles. You can't just animate the camera,
Yeah.
which is a huge thing. So maybe like as you know, it looked fine from one angle, and if it was a cinematic shot, probably get away with it maybe, but for gameplay you couldn't at all. So that's
Yeah.
a key difference there.
Yeah, it could be runtime. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the person doing the camera, maybe there's the cinematographer might go back and change angles. Yeah, exactly. It could be like they might be reusing some things and gameplay in the world. Yeah, it's not a great silhouette either. That's a good comment. All right. Yeah, whenever you're ready, we can go to the next pop quiz here. All right, so this is our reference pose again, and now let's look at this other pose. What feels off about this pose? This one might be one of the more trickier ones with the with the textures on, might not be quite as apparent. But if you focus on a certain part of the body, you'll see.
Back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Reference pose.
I think we've got one too far.
Did we go too far? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, here we go. So that pose on the right, before we, if you just want to pause it there.
Okay.
Any guesses? Clavicle? Not on this one. Although we kind of jumped ahead there.
Oh, okay. I'll back up.
Yeah, right there is good. So this one's tricky. Yeah, exactly. Rigonize has got it. It's so I'm rotating from the upper part of the spine, right? If you look at the hips and the lower back, it's static. It's like going straight up. But once you see, the upper spine is kind of creating this unnatural rotation, and yeah, it doesn't look physically accurate. But it's really, it's not easy to see from certain angles. But when you get kind of up front, you can see this big like dip in the lower torso where it's kind of going straight up and down.
Yeah, you kind of see.
Not bending from the lumbar portion of the spine. All right. Well done. Yes, I see another correct answer. Yeah.
So is this the reference pose again?
Let's see. I think this is this is still the not rotating the lower spine. So Here we go, the next one. So here's the reference pose again. This is the more correct version in quotes. Here's our other version.
Oh, yes. Let's see.
It's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. This is one that I really that I notice a lot with this character because he's got these giant broad shoulders. So when I see a lack of this, it's always kind of stands out to me.
Yeah.
Yes, the shoulders, the clavicles, yeah. So yeah, the character on the right is missing the rotation, the movement on the clavicle. There's no influence there. We're just rotating the arms, and when you look at them both, you can see that it makes quite a bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
All right, this one's a freebie. This one should be a freebie.
What are the differences?
There's one little difference.
Yeah, that looks like the head.
So yeah, like
could adjust some of the upper body, some of the.
Yeah, there's no influence, right? Yeah. If you were to see this animation, if you were to go from this pose to that pose, it would feel really odd because one is completely static and the other is getting all this influence. So yeah, I mean that's always one to watch out for. Like what's being influenced by moving this body part?
Yeah, you lead your blinks with your hips, right? It's just everything influences everything. Right?
And I believe this is our final one here. So here's our reference pose.
Ooh. Ooh.
This one I see a lot as well.
Yeah.
So what is different with the character on the right side?
Ouch.
The left one farted. I don't know about that. That could be true. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that ankle.
Ankle, yes. Yeah. So yeah, the ankle, the knees, for us animators, basically the pull vectors are not, the angle of the foot needs to have like the knee kind of relative, like close within a certain proximity. Once you start kind of going beyond that, then you get these broken looking poses. A way to fix that would be to pivot the foot, of course, or rotate the foot. But when we look at our pose, the way to fix it would be to rotate the pull vector so that our knee is more kind of following the angle of the foot.
Yeah.
And then also, if you look at the front left foot, right, that's also looking broken because we have it flat on the ground with our knee bent. Painful.
Yeah, I was going to say, so some of these rigs, they're so fancy and they kind of handle things automatically, but you still need to babysit some things. Just because you have a pull vector in the knee that will follow along with your leg, or you have IK feet or arms, you still want to be aware of how that affects the rest of the body in the pose.
Yeah, and another thing I just wanted to mention too, at the beginning I said these are.
Whoops.
Sorry. I got cut. So
important.
Yeah. I was just going to say, remember, when I started this, you might think, oh, these are obvious, very obvious things. But when you're doing a gameplay animation or a complicated 3D animation, you could have constraints, all kinds of things. All this other physicality kind of building on itself. So it's easy to let one or two of these things slip by. So these are always just good things, like a mental checklist to consider when you're posing.
Yeah, and when you hear it, you're like, oh, yeah, of course, that makes sense. I got it. But when you're in the moment and you're building out your poses, you've got your video reference or your sketches, it is so easy to just forget it. You just lose yourself in there because you're already visualizing it, but it's not coming out strong enough. I think I think there's a reason why you wanted to do this talk. I think you're probably seeing this a lot as an instructor, and I think even just having a Post-it note or something next to your monitor it says, all right, check your balance, check your clavicles, your ankles.
Yeah, animating too when you're staring at something. I know you guys can relate to this, or everyone can relate to this, but when you're staring at the same animation for hours and hours or at a time, you tend to start to lose objectivity. Oh yeah, this was good. So I mean, these issues aren't these aren't terrible things because it happens to all of us, but things like walking away and coming back and with the fresh eyes and kind of looking at things can help too. And getting critiques from your peers and your instructors. But yeah, when you stare at something for so long, you can start to lose your objectivity. That's another thing to be careful.
Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I don't think anybody's immune to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever get to that point where you're got this in the bag. Animation is observation, and it's always helpful when you're going out, just kind of watching how are their clavicles, or what makes their walk feel different than someone else's, and the hip placements, and it takes a village sometimes to get a good animation going, and being open to sharing your work, asking for feedback. It's always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thank you, Evan. This is a great talk. I love that we can not only talk about technical things like you did last time with the animation blueprints, but we can also go back to what we might consider the fundamentals, and things that just we try, we try to remember these things, but it's a great reminder, and I think as somebody that has viewed a lot of student work and led teams, I think this is awesome to just be like, all right, here's your cheat sheet. This is exactly what you should be working on. Like, just make sure you got that in, under control when you send in your work. I think it's a great way to help somebody get a leg up or an arm up. Maybe I should say.
Don't forget that clavicle.
Don't forget the clavicle. Yeah.
I do have a question for you two.
Yeah.
To kind of like help catch yourself or to, prevent maybe some of these issues from coming up when, you're working on your animation. Someone asked, like, is there a certain order of like which body part you move? Like, do you start with, the shoulder first, then go to like the chest, or like what's your way of tackling something like this so that maybe you don't run into these problems?
Yeah, Evan, do you want to answer
Yeah.
that?
Sure. Like, I would say, like, ideally, you're maybe starting from like the hips, like the root of the character, and like building upon that. But as you're posing, you're going to adjust things, you're going to change things. So things, the order is always going to change. But maybe when you're first starting to block out, kind of working from kind of like the center of gravity onward. But yeah, I mean, like, as you go through and adjust things, like, that gets to be like not a realistic workflow. You don't want to go to every pose and like, okay, now I got to start from the hips. You want to, just make sure basically you're looking at it as a full pose, right? Not like, oh yeah, I rotated my arm. How's that look? No, you want to look at it like, okay, how's the whole body feel now that I did this? Like, does this look correct?
Yeah. And there are programs out there like Human IK or Motion Builder and even Cascador that's come out where there's these physics-based animation systems, or just this kind of a loose posing system where you take the hips and it just kind of automatically kind of curves your spine a certain way when you move it around. And they're great helpers, but it's also important that we keep that in mind ourselves. So when we move the hips, you have this giant mass right here. When you move that, how does that affect the rest of the body to compensate? My spine needs to stay over top of my feet to try to redistribute that weight. I think those are just some important things to keep in mind. But yeah, that can be tricky when you start moving individual objects, and I think sometimes that helps when you see it in motion, or when you just know, like, if I have an imaginary line coming out from my shoulder, for example, like, or wherever that is, at some point the shoulder is going to lift up, and so if I'm rotating my arms around, like, oh, my arm is up here, so I know my clavicle is going to start needing to support that motion.
Yeah, definitely.
Act it out, pulls it out.
And I would say, like, some rigs too might have like an auto clavicle, but personally, like, I prefer to do it manually, just because sometimes it doesn't give me the results. Like, it might start moving the clavicle, but I'm still like, this doesn't, like, I feel like it should be more or less. So, every animator does things differently, but I tend to prefer to do it manually.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. In fact, I'm probably in the minority, but I don't usually use foot rolls in my rigs. I usually like to just keep all of my animation data on one control, because it's fewer data I need to worry about. Mm-hmm. But it does mean I have to babysit a little bit more when I lift up that heel. Then I got to counter rotate the foot down and then the toe, and trying to just really be mindful of the things that I'm moving.
Awesome, cool. Another question. For when this is more just generally, when you're blocking, you're planning a shot, and there's an IK FK switch or some sort of constraint, being turn on, turn off. Is that something that you block in with your animation, or is that something that you do maybe later down the road in spline or polish?
Yeah, what do you think, Evan?
When I'm blocking, I don't care about whatever. Like I usually just have it in steps, and I'm just trying to think in poses. And then once I've kind of got like a rough grasp of my posing and my timing, then I'll start to like worry about that, like switching and when what should this be FK IK. But I'm some of them I'm like going back and forth as I'm posing. I don't really think about that until I'm kind of later in the process.
Yeah, I don't want the technology to limit the art either. Like I'm trying to think of like, well, what should my move be? If I don't have to touch anything, I'll usually keep my arms in FK because I know that I get some of that influence for free. Like when I rotate my spine, I get these arms for free, which happens naturally, And then afterwards, what I might tend to do is maybe do like an IK bake, and then I can clean up some curves a little bit, because IK has the nice, you're just worrying about that where the wrist is. It's an extra step, but I'm trying to think about what does the shot require. If I've got a two-handed weapon, obviously I'm going to need IK in there at some point because the right arm or left arm is going to need to drive that weapon. But whenever I am working in IK, I'm always being very cautious. And I've seen some students choose IK because they're like, well, it goes wherever I put it. But then that's great. But then they tend to forget it. They put their IK out there, and then suddenly like they're moving, and then it just kind of feels like everything just kind of stays in place, and then you gotta counter animate that, you gotta kind of figure out what's the body doing to that IK chain or to that, to that arm. How do I make IK look like FK at that point?
It's a trade-off, right? Like with FK, you get all this stuff for free, and with IK, you're gonna need more keys, and it's gonna take a lot more effort to kind of recreate that same motion. But you have that fine control. I would just also like say, don't be concerned about like you shouldn't be like, oh, I got to do this all in IK or all in FK. Switching is just kind of one of those things where you gotta get used to it, and the fact you'll have animations where maybe you want part of it in FK and then you want to switch to IK. So it's it's not an either or; it can be both.
Yeah.
Man. I will say for like more on the side of the constraint side of that question, I do tend to plan that out a little bit more because in my brain, like constraints, they can get kind of funky. So I do like to like block in, this is when the character pick up the cup and I know that switch is turning on. And then, if I need to put it down when it's being turned off. That's something I like to do just so that way when it goes in that spline phase, it's more cleaner for me. But that's just, it's how I work. That's how my brain thinks.
Yeah.
When I go to spline, it's usually a mess for sure.
Yep.
Not enough breakdowns. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
Yeah. So I have two that I got right now. One of them is when you're doing like a walk cycle or some sort of cycle, what's like the ideal deadline? What's something where how long would it normally take to do like a walk cycle?
It's a great question. And I think that the main thing to keep in mind is that even when you're just starting out, like time is irrelevant. It's more about doing it right and taking the time to figure out what are the steps. And when you're hired as, let's say, a junior animator or an associate animator, the expectation is, just let's see how much quality we can get out of you, and not we got to do this fast. Just do it fast, because then you're going to make some missteps. And for our assignments in school, we have our walk cycles last a week. Like we'll give you a week to work on it. That doesn't include the polish that might come up at the end of the term. But the main thing is trying to choose what's the most important thing that you need to convey in your walk cycle or in any animation. how do you sell the idea, whether it be personality or force? What is it that you're trying to say through that animation, and what's the minimum viable product that you can give to somebody like an engineer to implement, so that they can have something to work with. And then that frees you up then later to come back and to work on it. So it's very rare that we have to work on something from start to end in one chunk of time as game animators. We're just kind of working at it in pieces. This can be hard mentally for some folks because they just want it perfect before they turn it in. Before anybody sees it, it's got to be perfect. But that's just not realistic in the industry. You have to get into the game. You got to try it out, see how it feels, get feedback from other people. Sometimes speeds are changing. Our character's running now too fast. Let's slow that down. Well, then you got to go back and adjust the walk cycle. If you were to start and do like a first pass, I'm just kind of going to throw this out there. I'd say anywhere from 4 to 8 hours would probably be a good amount of time to do the walk cycle. That's very relative to my world, but maybe Matt or Evan, maybe you've got other ideas.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to that it's something too that after you start doing them a lot, it could be you start to speed up a lot faster, right? After maybe the first couple, it might take a long time. Then depending on the game you're working on too, like I worked on MMOs where we had to do like a lot of walks, a lot of locomotion. So that's up to the more you do it, the more that you kind of work that muscle, then the faster kind of you get at animating that stuff and kind of like knowing how to start and get things like looking correct.
Yeah, that's a great question. What about you, Matt? Anything you want to add?
Oh yeah, I'd say that like for me, like it is around that 4 to 8 hour mark for like something that's functional and like it's definitely like shippable. But if it's like, it might not be like the most polished thing, but it's definitely like we can put this in a game, we can ship it, and no one on Reddit will complain about it, right? That's like generally what I try to go for. Sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't. A big thing that I also want to factor in is that not every walk cycle is different, or is the same. Sorry, not every walk cycle is the same, and you might be able to do one walk cycle, and it's like, oh, that was an easy day, and then you'll have to do another type of walk cycle. It still could be a biped, and it's just a different like personality, and that might take you 2 days, 3 days, a week, right? So it's also just depends on like the actual individual assignment. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and if it's like a player versus an NPC, that makes a big difference too. If your game's third person and you're seeing this locomotion, I mean that's probably like what you see 90% of the time in gameplay, right? Because you're mostly just moving around. So yeah, those depending on like the context, it's to be like super important.
Yeah. Another question, and this is what I find very interesting. Do the pitfalls that we talked about today, do they also do these apply to characters that might not have like certain body parts? Like, for instance, if someone doesn't like have like they might be missing a limb, right? Or like for instance, like an arm, will the clavicle and stuff like that be really applicable to something with that type of context?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think yes and no. Like if you don't have an arm, then I don't. Maybe there would still be. I'm not sure if there would. I'm sure you feel like there would be some kind of influence there, but it might be a bit muted. But like if you have like a pirate with a peg leg or something, you still have to make sure that that's balanced, and that's probably a whole different cadence and a whole different set of issues with something like that, where you don't have the ankle to kind of flex and rotate. So I can imagine that'd be a lot more stiffer. But yeah, I think I would say like, even like creatures, robots, anything. I mean, robots might be a bit different, but for creatures, like these kind of things all are still relevant because, they have to balance and stand up, even if they're on 4 legs, and it might be a little easier to balance. But I feel like these things are applicable to most characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say too. Especially balance, and everything has a center of mass. Everything's got that base of support, whether it's feet or a peg or whatever. Like, I always have my students, when they set up their feet or whatever's touching the ground, to like orbit around the camera to line everything up, draw a line up through the feet, straight up, and then just kind of figure out, like, is there equal weight on both sides of that? I think, that's always going to be a thing, maybe not clavicles if you're missing arms, but, I think still there's some application there.
Yeah.
And I would just add to that too, like, from in gameplay, since we can see, sometimes you might be able to spin the camera around. You want it to look as good from as many angles as possible. So we want to avoid like parallel feet and things like that, which is another thing that, I think people realize once they see it in engine, they're like, oh, they pose it out, and it might be like the feet pointing the same way, the feet are parallel, and then you see it, and it does look super great, right, from like the gameplay camera.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also, I feel like a big thing is that if you have an example of like this person mentioned not having like hips, like it could be like a zombie or like only the torso up, right? This might be hard for that example, but like for some things, like find reference, like find video reference of like certain things where if you find someone that might be missing a limb, and seeing like what happened, like when they move their body, like is there differences, like does their like clavicle move, like is there just that residual like movement of like like it just happens, that shoulder just happens to move, right? Like what type of stuff is is going on there. And I feel like that's something that's really important, is to just have video reference on hand that you can just kind of grab from and take to add into your pose.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. Video reference is not something that you ever should feel like you need to grow out of. I think even when I'm doing my own video reference, I'm surprised by the type of mechanics that I do naturally without thinking about it. I think that's the trick too, is you don't want to be thinking about it so hard. You're like, okay, I got to do it like this, try to get natural, whether it's finding something on YouTube or doing it yourself. But for example, my classic surprise that I like to share is I did this side walk. I'm kind of like sideways here, and as I'm walking, I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably landing on my toes, or I think heels is kind of how you're taught, that all walks land on heels. But then the more you kind of work with walks and runs, you realize, some people walk on their toes, some people walk on their heels. When I was going sideways, I was noticing, my heel is landing on one step and my toe is landing on the other. So I was kind of doing like this alternating physicality that I wouldn't have guessed in my head. I would think, okay, you're always one way or the other. But that was just something that surprised me. And I think, doing your own reference, watching how your clavicles are working, where does that bend come in the spine when you're bending over? Those are all things that can help support your animation. You don't want to copy it exactly, right? You just want to take that physicality and apply it to whatever character you're working on.
Yeah. Next question. Any suggestions on handling the graph editor? It can get really messy super quickly, and I feel like it's always the bane of new animators. And I kind of want to take this one if you're please, okay with that. Yeah,
please, yes.
I would say if you're really struggling with the graph editor, do a bouncing ball from like a sideways view, and maybe just have it go up and down, and maybe left to right if you're feeling confident. That way you can see what's going on just with one curve, and then you can just kind of play with it, see how it works and how it feels. When you move, when your handles, what does it do in the viewport? And then you can then start branching out and start, adding some different roles, or maybe adding, more depth into, your bouncing ball. And then you can take that, and when you do start animating a character, you'll kind of be familiar with the layout and the feel. And also, if it's just, you're thinking like, I have so many keys, on my graph editor, that I think that's kind of par for the course of like, you're just kind of a lot of keys on your graph editor, by the end of it, it's hard to kind of keep track of it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Evan, you want something to add?
Yeah, I'll just add, like, definitely, like, a mistake I made in my earlier years was relying too much on the graph editor. Like, I would, pose my character, then I want my curves to be all like perfectly silky smooth. And then doing that, you can lose like the character or the snappiness, or the curves aren't gonna always be like nice and neat, right? Like, we're not gonna stand straight and have no gimbal lock or Euler issues. Usually you're doing all kinds of rotations. So I would just add that I would look in your viewport. Don't just like go in your graph editor and be like, oh, I want to make this curve a little smoother, and just like look at my graph editor and not see like, oh, I kind of just made, now it feels a lot different, or now it's not having the same impact. Just be careful changing your curves. You got the easy ones like the up and down translation. Those are like the nice and easy ones. But when you're doing rotation, be careful. Just kind of be like, oh, my rotate Y curve is not as smooth as it could be.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I have two sides, because I think, having had the experience, you can kind of look at graph editors and see the matrix. You're like, oh, I could animate this ball just by looking at my graph editor. I wouldn't have to see anything on my viewport at all. You can get to that point, but ultimately it's not about the graphs. It's not about the curves. It's about what does it look like on screen. And sometimes you have to get messy before you can get clean. And you should never be scared of looking at curves, And I think with the usage of animation layers, like the additive layers and things like that, you can get it to look the way you want in the viewport, and then just move things around the way you want, just with additive layers. And you shouldn't be afraid of keys either. The goal is not to have the cleanest, most sparse keys that you can have. The goal is to get something that looks realistic. I think if you were to take an object that maybe had a strange shape to it, and you had it bouncing on the ground, you're not going to have clean rotations. You're going to have, something that compensates for that center of mass, and it's going to, your curves are going to be all over the place, but it's going to look correct in the viewport, hopefully, by the end.
Yeah. Kind of jumping off on your comment on layers, do we use animation layers in gameplay animation? Is that stuff that's even, do you use it for like fidgets and, or shaking or whatever, or does that even go into the game engine?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, whatever you see in the viewport is what gets exported. I have had students that were afraid to add constraints because they thought that would mess up the game somehow. But really, the way game animations work is you have a base FK skeleton where there are 0 constraints that go into the game. And the way you do that is through the game exporter, like an FBX exporter. And really, whatever tools you use to manipulate your control rig or your character inside of Maya, you're free to do as you wish. And what happens on that export process is it actually takes all of the joints and it's just baking every single frame, under the hood. It's not destroying your scene, but it's creating a key on every frame so that when it gets into Unreal, what you see in Maya is what you see in Unreal, key for key. Now, I say it that way because you also have in-between keys, and that's where Unreal gets to do its own in-betweening. But yeah, for the most part, whatever you see in Maya is what you can see in the game.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of layers, and I definitely suggest my students use layers because it's a great way, like a non-destructive way of, oh, what if I kind of amp this pose up a lot, or it's just such a quick and easy way of adding like noise and kind of building upon your poses. And maybe you something I like to do a lot is push things like a lot further, and then I'll just dial the layer down. Like, okay, like what is okay now? It feels like more like appropriate amount rather than just kind of okay, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of layers. But I know some people are intimidated for some reason or kind of take pride in not using animation layers. But for me, it's just another tool, and use whatever tools you have to get the best results.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember for one of my assignments at work, I don't know why I did this. This was over a year now, but I had around like 30 layers of like, just like, I think it was just, I went by like each individual like control, and I was like,
Did they all say base layer 1, base layer 2?
No, I named them. All right. I was professional. I named them. I not only did I name them, I grouped them together.
Oh,
so
wow.
I made sure that if someone else grabbed my file, they would be mad at me, but not that mad at me.
I've definitely opened many other animators files before and had to kind of figure out what is going on in the scene. Yeah, because there's layers upon layers upon layers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great. Any other questions? I think we could probably wrap it up here soon if there aren't any.
I kind of touched on this pretty quickly in the chat, but we have the 3D animation course and the game animation course at AnimSchool. And like the big difference is the 3D animation course focuses more on like film and TV, and the game course is more for game animation. So I just want to address that here.
Yeah. More polish, more to just one camera, for the film side of things. Game side, we're handling the technical. We're teaching you the logic that it takes to build a game. We want our animators, our students, to come out of our class not to just think of themselves as animators or game animators, but game developers. We like to teach just the philosophy and the theory behind game making. How to put yourself in the seat of the player. We all have played games, most of us that come into the game course. I don't want that to scare anybody away if you haven't played games, because we have certainly had folks that have come in because they just want to focus on more body mechanics. Games are known for just really kind of focusing on body mechanics. And we're stringing multiple animations together to create a sequence that equals the feedback that you get as a player. When you press that button, what are you expecting out of that button press? What do you want that to feel like? What idea do you want that to convey? So yeah, that's the big difference. And our students will come out of the class with a demo reel. We've seen a lot of success with students getting jobs right out of our class, our courses class. And it's a great community that we're building. I love that we all help each other, we celebrate each other. It's a really great community to be a part of.
That adds to like a lot of, if you look at job descriptions for a lot of game animation jobs too, you might see like familiarity with Unreal or an engine. So this is a great way to kind of get a little bit used to an engine and say, yeah, I've worked in Unreal, I'm familiar with the process. Rather than trying to like, if you're interviewing for a job, if you don't have that skill or that skill set yet, it's great to kind of learn that and understand, because a lot of those principles are universal, even if you're using different engines. But.
Great. Yeah, well, I think that about wraps it up here. I really appreciate Matt and Evan coming in. Evan, that was an amazing demonstration, amazing talk here, and we do plan to hold these regularly. I think the fun of these workshops is that sometimes we get so tight with our 11-week limitation of our classes, and we like to branch that out and share our expertise, the things that we've learned along the way, and hopefully this helps answer your questions regarding what the AnimSchool Games program provides. You can send in your reel to AnimSchool if you have experience already, but maybe you haven't made the transition to games. We've had folks that have come from film, and there's different levels of experience for all of our students, but we've had great feedback, just people, finding what it is that they want to get out of the program and honing in on that. Well, thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a great day or night, and look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks for showing up.